Hey everyone. One of the key factors causing the Federal Reserve to raise rates is wage inflation. Rising wages are inflationary by nature because they increase business operating costs, which are ultimately passed along to consumers. In each of the Fed's recent press conferences, Chairman Powell cited wage growth as one of the key inflationary pressures causing them to raise rates. But the impact of raising interest rates on wage growth is pretty indirect. In reality, what the Fed's trying to do is slow down business growth, which in turn slows hiring, ultimately softening the labor market and then reducing wage pressure. The unemployment rate is 3.4%. We've hit that number a couple of times over the last year, but prior to that, the last time unemployment was at 3.4% was in 1969, 54 years ago. And that ultra-low unemployment rate has been accompanied by a severe labor shortage. Currently, there are about 9.6 million job openings in the US. While that's down substantively from the 12 million available positions in March of last year, it's still very high. At the same time, we've seen the total number of unemployed people decline sharply, reiterating the labor shortage and putting upward pressure on wages. When I share this information with investors, many of them speculate that this is a byproduct of stimulus or the health crisis, and that a lot of young adults are simply choosing not to work. Looking at the headline labor force participation rate, that makes sense. Through the early 2000s, the labor force participation was in the 66% range. Then we had the global financial crisis and the labor force participation rate downshifted to the 63% range. It stayed there until the health crisis when participation cratered, falling to about 60%. Since then, it's been crawling back. It's now at 62.6%. Still low, but a pretty good improvement from where we were a couple years ago. But a lot of people think this is tied to the millennial generation. In reality, the labor force participation of people between 25 and 54 years old is 83.3%, on par with where it was just prior to the pandemic and also prior to the global financial crisis. Basically, labor participation for the core employment demographic between 25 and 54 is back to normal. So the labor shortage is not tied to a bunch of 20-something slackers. There are three things driving the labor shortage. First, a record number of Americans are working. There are 3.3 million more jobs in the US than there were prior to the pandemic. Second, the significant drop in labor force participation was people over the age of 55, the baby boomers. At the onset of the pandemic, many of the boomers that had been putting off retirement decided it was time to step out of the labor force. The participation rate of this segment is 38.4%, down from the 40% range it was before the health crisis. The third factor is the impact of reduced legal immigration to the United States. From 2003 to 2016, the US added about 900,000 net new residents each year through immigration. That number began to fall in 2017, and in 2019, only 570,000 people immigrated to the US. That number fell even more during the pandemic, reaching just 376,000 new immigrants in 2021. Those 4 or 5 years of reduced immigration reduced the inflow of new labor to the workforce. But the good news, at least for employers, is that we've seen a bit of a rebound in the immigration numbers. In 2022, the US added an estimated 1 million new residents. So how does the labor shortage affect commercial real estate? One indirect way, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is that the labor shortage has ultimately been a contributing factor to higher interest rates. Some of the more direct effects include higher office vacancy, as employers have shifted to a hybrid work model to retain employees. In addition, many real estate-oriented businesses are having a hard time filling key positions like property managers, maintenance people, security personnel, hotel staff, or medical service providers at seniors' housing facilities. That in turn is driving up operating costs. The other direct effect is the shortage of construction workers, which is slowing the completion of new buildings. In addition, construction labor costs are up 15.3% from pre-pandemic. That's hitting developers financially as they have to extend their construction timelines and their loans. Ultimately, slowing the construction pipeline reduces commercial real estate supply side pressures, supporting the performance of existing assets, a favorable trend for investors. The commercial real estate sector still faces a variety of headwinds, but if the labor market cools a bit, that could be a good thing. Things could change quickly. There are a lot of variables in play. That's why every investor needs to keep their eyes on the horizon.